In 1718 Bahamas, where reefs hide secrets and pirates rule, Elias Kane, a disgraced Navy captain turned honorable pirate, holds a map to the Siren's cache, a lost Spanish treasure. When Eleanor Winthrop, the governor's defiant daughter, is kidnapped by the ruthless Blackthorn, Kane's quest to save her and claim the gold sparks a deadly chase and a forbidden passion that could burn them both. The sun blazed over the cerulean sprawl of the Caribbean, its rays glinting off the coral reefs that ringed New Providence like a siren's snare. The age of piracy was a fleeting storm, a time when men and women defied empires with cannon and cutlass, and the line between honor and infamy was as fragile as a ship's mast in a gale. Nassau, the beating heart of this lawless frontier, was a cauldron of ambition, where pirate crews, rogue merchants, and desperate dreamers clashed under the shadow of crumbling forts. Elias Kane, once a captain in the Royal Navy, now commanded the Defiant, a sloop as swift and unyielding as her name. At 34, Kane was a man shaped by betrayal, court-martialed for sparing a French merchant crew during the War of Spanish Secession. He had embraced the black flag, but with a code: never harm the innocent, never break a sworn oath. His dark hair was tied back, his gray eyes sharp as a blade's edge, always scanning for the next threat. His crew of 40, a hardened mix of sailors and outcasts, followed him not out of fear, but respect, a rare currency in these blood-stained waters. Kane's latest prize was a tattered parchment, wrested from a smuggler's corpse in a Nassau tavern brawl. The map, its ink faded but legible, charted a maze of reefs around Abaco Island, leading to the Siren's cache, a legendary hoard of Spanish gold lost when the galleon Nuestra Senora de la Luz sank in a hurricane a decade ago. Its riddles, cryptic phrases like the widow's tears and the serpent's coil, were a puzzle Kane couldn't crack alone. The gold promised salvation, enough to secure his crew's loyalty, refit the Defiant, and perhaps buy a pardon from the crown. But the map was a magnet for trouble, and trouble had a name: Blackthorn, a pirate captain whose cruelty was whispered from Tortuga to Port Royal. Kane's plan was to sail to Abaco, decipher the map, and claim the cache before Blackthorn could. Fate, however, had other plans. Word had swept through Nassau like a squall. Eleanor Winthrop, the 22-year-old daughter of Governor Charles Winthrop, had been kidnapped by Blackthorn's crew. The governor, a stern man whose grip on New Providence was as tenuous as the island's defenses, offered a king's ransom for her return. Kane saw a dual opportunity. Eleanor, educated in London and privy to her father's library of rare navigational texts, might unravel the map's secrets. Rescuing her would improve his odds for a pardon and get him closer to Spanish gold. The Defiant slipped out of Nassau at dawn, her sails catching the trade winds as she carved through the turquoise sea. Kane stood on the quarterdeck, the map spread on a crate, its edges curling in the salt air. His first mate, Lachlan, a grizzled Scotsman with a scarred face, squinted at the parchment. "This map's a cursed thing, Captain. You sure about chasing it?" "It's our way out," Kane said, his voice steady but his mind churning. Eleanor Winthrop was no ordinary prize. Rumors painted her as fiercely intelligent, a woman who defied her father's colonial cage. If she could crack the map, they might outrun Blackthorn. If not, they were sailing into a noose. Blackthorn's stronghold was a fortified quay north of Abaco, a jagged rock encircled by shoals that could splinter a ship like kindling. The Defiant anchored a mile offshore, her black flag stowed to avoid detection. Kane planned a night raid, leading 12 men in 2 longboats, their oars wrapped in cloth to muffle the splash. The sea was a black mirror, the stars a glittering map of their own. His crew, armed with flintlocks, cutlasses, and grappling hooks, moved with the precision of men who knew one mistake meant death. The quay's defenses were a patchwork of brutality, a palisade of spiked logs, a watchtower with a dozing sentry, and a camp reeking of rum and sweat. Kane scaled the wall first, his dagger silencing the guard with a single thrust. The camp sprawled below, a chaos of tents and dying bonfires. Eleanor was held in a shack at the center, guarded by 3 of Blackthorn's men, their laughter coarse as they played dice on a crate. Kane signaled, and the attack was a lightning strike. Pistol shots cracked, steel clashed, and the guards fell in a heap. Kane kicked open the shack's door, his flintlock raised. Eleanor Winthrop stood against the wall, her auburn hair tangled, her blue eyes blazing like a storm at sea. Her gown was torn, but she held a stolen rapier with a fencer's grip, her stance defiant. "If you're one of Blackthorn's, I'll carve your heart out," she snapped. "Elias Kane, captain of the Defiant," he said, lowering his weapon. "I'm here to free you." Her gaze raked over him, sharp as a blade. "A pirate? Why should I trust you?" "Because Blackthorn will flay you alive by morning if you don't," Kane said. "And I need your help to find something." She hesitated, then lowered the rapier, her eyes never leaving his. "Get me out, but cross me, and you'll wish Blackthorn had you first." They fled as alarms rang out, Blackthorn's men swarming like rats. The longboats reached the Defiant as cannon fire from the K's battery churned the sea. Kane took the helm, threading the sloop through a channel so narrow her hull grazed coral. By dawn they were clear, the K a fading smudge. But Kane knew Blackthorn would pursue. The map's promise was a siren's call no pirate could resist. Aboard the Defiant, Eleanor proved her mettle. In the captain's cabin, lit by swaying lantern, she pored over the map, her fingers tracing its riddles with a scholar's precision. "The Widow's Tears is likely a waterfall on Abaco," she said, her voice crisp despite her ordeal. "The Serpent's Coil could be a reef shaped like a spiral. My father's library has Spanish charts from the 1600s. I've studied them." Kane leaned over the table, his respect growing. "Can you pinpoint it?" "With time," she said, meeting his gaze. "But Blackthorn's not the patience sort, is he?" "No," Kane said. "He'll hunt us to hell and back." "Then we move fast," she said, a spark of defiance in her eyes. Their alliance was fragile, built on necessity. Eleanor was no delicate flower. She challenged Kane's orders, debated strategy with Lachlan, and earned the crew's grudging admiration by stitching wounds during a squall that snapped a yardarm and injured 4 men. Kane taught her to read the stars and trim a sail, his patience surprising him. Her intellect was a beacon, her courage a fire that burned through her refined exterior. Yet she was the governor's daughter, bound to a world Kane had forsaken. Trust was a reef they navigated with care. The pursuit began on the 3rd day. The Revenant, Blackthorn's brigantine, loomed on the horizon, her black sails a grim portent. Kane knew a direct fight was suicide. The Defiant was nimble but outgunned. He steered for Abaco's reefs, where the map's clues converged. The island rose from the sea, its cliffs veiled in a mist, its shores guarded by coral that could gut a ship like a fish. Eleanor, now in a borrowed shirt and breeches, stood at his side, her charts spread across the helm. "The waterfall's in that cove," she said, pointing. "The reefs beyond it matches the Serpent's Coil. The cache is likely in a cave underwater." Kane nodded, his jaw tight. "We'll dive at dusk. Blackthorn won't risk his ship in those waters." But Blackthorn was a hound on the scent. The Revenant shadowed them, her longboats probing the cove's edge. Kane's crew prepared for battle, sharpening blades and loading muskets. Tensions ran high. Some whispered Eleanor was bad luck, a governor's brat who'd bring the Navy down on them. Kane silenced the mutterings with a glare, but doubt gnawed at him. Was she truly an ally, or a pawn in a larger game? The cove was a sanctuary of jade water and white sand, the waterfall a silver cascade plunging from a cliff. Kane and Eleanor led a shore party, her rapier at the ready, his eyes scanning for danger. The map's final clue, a sketch of a cave mouth, lay beneath the lagoon. They dove, the water cold and clear, their breaths held long as they swam through a coral tunnel. The cave was there, its walls glittering with chests of gold, silver, and jewels, the Siren's cache, untouched by time. They surfaced, gasping, only to find Blackthorn's men waiting. The skirmish was brutal, steel flashing in the twilight. Kane fought with lethal precision, shielding Eleanor as she dragged a chest to the shore. Lachlan's reinforcements arrived, but Blackthorn's forces pressed harder, their numbers swelling as more longboats landed. Kane ordered a retreat to a defensible ridge, the chest hidden in a crevice. Eleanor, her face streaked with sweat, wielded her rapier with surprising skill, felling a pirate who lunged at Kane. Night fell, the cove a battlefield lit by torchlight. Blackthorn's men encircled the ridge, their taunts echoing. Kane and Eleanor devised a desperate plan: lure the Revenant closer to the reef where the tide could trap her. They sent Lachlan to signal the Defiant, while Kane and Eleanor crept through the jungle, planting false clues to draw Blackthorn's scouts. The tension between them crackled. Every glance, every brush of their hands was a spark in the night. At dawn, the trap was set. The Defiant fired a decoy salvo, gourding the Revenant into the reef's embrace. Blackthorn, enraged, led a final assault on the ridge. The battle was chaos. Musket fire, clashing steel, and the roar of the surf. Kane faced Blackthorn himself, a giant with a scarred face and a boarding axe. "The gold's mine, Kane!" he bellowed. Eleanor, quick as a cat, shouted, "The tide's turning! Your ship's done!" Blackthorn faltered and Kane struck, disarming him with a deft parry. They grappled in the surf, Kane's strength waning until Eleanor hurled a rock, stunning Blackthorn. Kane finished it, his cutlass finding its mark. The Revenant struck the reef, her hull splintering, and Blackthorn's men fell or fled. The Defiant's crew secured the chest, and Kane's sloop sailed free, the cove a graveyard of broken dreams. The night air was thick with the scent of salt and mangroves, the moon a silver coin casting ripples across the secluded lagoon. Elias Kane and Eleanor Winthrop sat on the shore, the chest of gold from the Siren's cache glinting faintly beside them, a mute testament to their hard-won victory. The Defiant lay anchored beyond the cove, its crew's distant revelry a faint echo, leaving them in a world of their own. The weight of their triumph, the battle with Blackthorn, and the specter of the future hung between them, unspoken but palpable. Eleanor's gaze met Kane's, her blue eyes luminous in the moonlight, a storm of defiance and vulnerability swirling within them. "You risked everything," she said, her voice soft but edged with wonder. "For me, for this. Why, Elias?" He looked at her, her face a beacon in the dark, her auburn hair loose and tangled from the day's chaos. "Because you're worth more than any gold, Eleanor," he said, his voice rough with truth. "Because I'm tired of running from what's real." She laughed, a sound that danced between relief and rebellion. "You're a fool, Elias Kane, a brave, stubborn fool." Eleanor reached for him, her fingers grazing his cheek. The touch was a spark, igniting the air between them. She leaned closer, her breath warm, and kissed him. It was a tempest, a fierce collision of longing and defiance that swept away the blood, the steel, the chains of their worlds. Her lips were soft yet urgent, tasting of salt and courage, and Kane felt the walls he'd built around his heart shatter like a ship on a reef. His arms encircling her, pulling her against him, her body a lithe, trembling force pressed to his chest. She responded with a hunger that matched his own, her hands sliding up his arms, fingers digging into the hard muscle of his shoulders as if to anchor herself to this moment. The kiss deepened, a vow etched in the heat of their breath, their tongues meeting in a dance of need and surrender. They sank to the sand, the lagoon's gentle murmur their only witness. The coarse grains cooled beneath them as their movements wove a tapestry of urgency and reverence. Eleanor's hands roamed his chest, slipping beneath the open collar of his shirt to trace the scars that mapped his life, jagged lines from battles on sea and shore, each one a story of survival. Her touch was fire, searing his skin, and he groaned softly, the sound lost in the press of her lips. He cradled her face, his thumbs brushing away the tears that glistened on her cheeks, tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Her hair spilled across his shoulders, a cascade of auburn that caught the moonlight like a flame, and he buried his face in it, inhaling the scent of salt, jasmine, and the raw courage that was hers alone. Their bodies pressed closer, the heat of their embrace a defiance of the gallows, the governors, the empires that sought to claim them. His hand slid down her back, fingers tracing the curve of her spine through the thin fabric of her borrowed shirt, feeling the shudder that ran through her at his touch. She arched against him, her breath hitching, a soft moan escaping her lips that sent a jolt through his core. Her fingers gripped his back, nails biting into his skin, not in pain, but in a desperate need to hold him closer, to merge their fates in this fleeting sanctuary. His lips found her throat, tasting the pulse that raced beneath her skin, and her sigh was a melody that stirred his soul, a sound that spoke of dreams and defiance. She tilted her head back, offering herself to the moment, her hands tangling in his hair as she pulled him closer, her body molding to his. The stars above were their canopy, the rhythmic lap of the waves their pulse, and time seemed to pause, granting them this stolen eternity. Her whispers came soft and fervent, not of secrets, but of dreams. A house by the sea, a garden where they could walk hand in hand, a life where their names were their own, free from the shadows of pirate and governor's daughter. Kane's hands moved to her waist, lifting the hem of her shirt to feel the warmth of her skin, his touch gentle yet possessive, as if memorizing every curve, every breath. She shivered under his hands, her own fingers fumbling with the buttons of his shirt, exposing the planes of his chest to the cool night air. Her lips followed her hands, pressing soft kisses to the scars she'd traced, each one a silent acknowledgement of the battles they'd fought together. He groaned again, deeper this time, his hands tightening on her hips as she straddled him, her thighs pressing against his, the friction a spark that threatened to consume them both. Their union was a fire, burning through the fear, the doubt, the chains of their worlds. It was not conquest, but unity, a shared rebellion against the tides that sought to tear them apart. Her breath came in gasps, her eyes locked on his, blue and fierce, reflecting the moonlight and the depth of her longing. He kissed her again, slower now, savoring the taste of her, the way her lips parted for him, the way her body trembled with the same need that coursed through him. Their movements were a dance, urgent yet tender, each touch a promise, each sigh a vow to defy the dawn that loomed. The sand shifted beneath them, cradling their entwined forms as they moved together, the world narrowing to the heat of their skin, the rhythm of their breaths. Her fingers clutched his shoulders, her nails leaving faint crescents, and he held her tightly, his lips brushing her ear as he whispered her name, a prayer against the chaos of their lives. The lagoon's waves seemed to echo their pulse, a steady cadence that bound them to this moment, this place where they were no longer pirate and prisoner, but simply Elias and Eleanor, two souls forging a fragile hope in the crucible of survival. When the crescendo of their passion softened, they lay entwined, her head resting on his chest, her hair fanning across his skin like a silken veil. His arms were a fortress around her, his heartbeat a steady drum beneath her ear. The silence was heavy with unspoken promises, the chest of gold a mere shadow beside the wealth of their connection. Her fingers traced idle patterns on his chest, circling a scar near his heart, her touch a map of a future they dared to imagine. Elias kissed her forehead, his lips lingering, then trailed soft kisses along her temple, her cheek, sealing a vow neither could voice. The lagoon lapped at the shore, its rhythm a lullaby, and Kane held her close, his hand stroking her hair as the stars wheeled above. "We could stay here," she murmured, her voice a whisper against his skin. "Forget the gold, the ship, the world." He smiled, though it ached. "We'd never stop running, Eleanor." "Then let's run together," she said, lifting her head to meet his gaze, her eyes fierce with hope, "until the sea claims us." He didn't answer, but his arms tightened around her, a silent oath. The moonlight bathed them, and for those fleeting hours they clung to each other, willing the night to stretch forever, knowing dawn might steal this fire they'd kindled. By morning, the Defiant sailed for Nassau, the chest hidden below decks. Eleanor stood at the rail, her eyes on the horizon and her hand in Kane's. "What now, Captain?" she asked, a smile playing on her lips. "We deliver the gold and clear my name," he said, his voice steady. "Then we chart our own course." "Together?" she asked, her eyes bright with defiance. "Together," he said, and in that word lay a world of possibility, a new map for a life they would carve from the lawless sea.